tell us straight, Rebecca. Harry talks repeatedly and has done on various interviews about this idea that the leaking of stories about family members to improve their images or trade stories to sort of like have a bad story taken out. If you don't write this, I'll give you this story about this member of the royal family. How is that a thing?
No. I mean, I actually feel like I'm boring myself now saying this, but it really is true. I mean, I can only speak from personal experience, and I think when you go back from what I hear in the 80s and 90s, that whole kind of infamous War of the Wales period, there was a lot of briefing going on. But I certainly know when I came into doing this job, which is more than 15 years ago, I have not had a single member of the royal family discuss another member of the royal family with me. I have never had a member of staff ringing me saying, or emailing or whatever, saying, Rebecca, will you not run this negative story about one member because we've got this great story about Harry and Meghan, for example, that you could run instead that won't paint them in a good light. It just doesn't happen. The palace's default position is computer says no, I always say, especially when it comes to talking about members of the royal family in a personal capacity. It just does not happen. It is a total flight of fancy on his behalf, and all I can think is that he is replicating what he experienced as a young child and he saw going on between his parents to what's happening now, and that's just not my experience of it. It
so
really
as
is.
a social diarist, I'd be in a position for them to leak negative stories or whatever, but no, they try and avoid me as much as possible. But that, what I might get is I might put a story that I've heard to the press office, and they might say, look, for guidance, that's not accurate, and they might tell me the truth or steer me away from something, which is why we ring them.
It's an important part of the system of checks and balances.
And I wish Harry had done that with this book, because he hasn't done any of that.
I just get the feeling that, and there will always be people who are sceptical of that line, and even if it is true, it's just, I think that Harry believes it. Harry believes that is the case, doesn't he?
He does, and it's someone who's very well plumbed in and very sensible said to me, it is clear Harry believes what he's saying. It's as true to him as it is untrue to everybody else. Whether it's that he admits in his book he's had trouble remembering some things, and he's had therapy that's helped him to deal with that. He's had, he found writing the book a cathartic experience. Whether he has started to kind of pin what he remembers as a young boy on what actually happened now. It's very difficult for journalists to talk about where stories come from, but it is far more, I would say, cock up than conspiracy. To put trying to think of a better phrase to, you hear little bits here, you hear a little bit here, you start putting things together, and as Richard said, an important part of that is speaking to palace officials and saying, I've heard that, because you have to give people the chance to either confirm or deny it. But the active leaking or planting of stories is a very different thing.
They would be sacked. That's the thing.
100%.
They would be so nervous, because if it came out that this story had come from someone, that individual would be sacked. So they're not stupid. They're not going to risk their jobs.
Well, Harry, we've always known of Harry's disdain for senior courtiers at the palace, much like his mother, but some even in lower down the pecking order don't come out too well either, do they?
This is really important, and I think this is why some of the staff should be allowed to ignore the non-disclosure agreements. The palace should rescind those agreements so that they can speak out, because Harry libels a lot of staff in this book, and I've been able to identify people quite easily from, and so others will have identified lots of people. To give one example, he says that Meghan accepted freebies that were given to her by designers and other people trying to win favour with the royal family. Now, this is a really complicated area. They have to be disclosed. Generally, I think they have to be refused. I think in some cases you can keep them if they're registered, but it's a really complicated grey area. Well, he says that Meghan accepted them, but she shared them out with staff. So that means that those staff are complicit in accepting these freebies, and there's an issue there that they might want to address. They might want to say, we didn't want to, we only did it because she told us to. Then he goes into specifics, and he talks about how one aide, I'll try not to be too specific, was sacked because she'd been trading on her links to Meghan. Now, you know, I know who that individual is, and others will have easily identified this person. So that's pretty dodgy. You know, the lawyers have made lots of changes to his book, I'm sure, but it's so unfair that staff, long-serving staff, often not on great pay, they like to work for the royal family sometimes because it helps, it's good for your CV, move on to other jobs, and they're having this that will be a stain on their reputation. So I really think they should be able to hit back.
Well, watch this space. I'm sure people are seeking comments from them as we speak. Thanks for watching. On Thursdays, don't forget to tune into Palace Confidential, your weekly look at all things royal.